This is the historical timeline of bilingual education throughout the United States. First on the timeline is Brown versus Board of Education, which happened in 1954. Crawford said that in this case, the Supreme Court outlawed segregated schools with equal education, and it's important to know the quote, separate but equal. Second on the timeline is the National Defense Education Act of 1958. Crawford said that this act was the first act that provided funds towards math, science, and foreign language subjects. Third on the timeline is the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Although this act did not directly address bilingual education, it did open many doors to creating opportunities for English language learners. Crawford said that this act prohibited the discrimination of race, color, gender, and nationality in public places. School districts that received federal funds were to ensure that the English language learners got treated the same as non-English language learners. Fourth on the timeline is the Elementary and Secondary Act of 1965. Crawford said that this act provided schools with funds to meet the needs of students who didn't have a lot of money. Fifth on the timeline is the Bilingual Education Act of 1968. Crawford said that this was the first act that recognized the needs of these English language learners. It provided schools with federal funds for research and establishing curriculums to help the English language learners. Sixth on the timeline is the Serna versus Portales Municipal Schools, which happened in 1972. This was the first case where the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was enforced. Seventh on the timeline is the Lau versus Nichols case, which happened in 1974. This court case set the stage for developing ESL programs throughout United States schools. Eighth on the timeline is the Rios versus Reed case, which happened in 1977. Crawford said that in this case, a judge said that a school district in New York had violated LEP students' rights by providing bilingual programs that were half-hearted. Ninth on the timeline is the Castaneda versus Pickard case, which happened in 1978. Crawford said that this case stated that schools must implement programs for language minority students based on educational theory, implementing effective and sufficient resources, and evaluating students to determine if they can help other students overcome these language barriers. Last on the timeline is the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001. This act stated that LEP students must be taught English proficiency, as well as meet the same academic standards of their peers throughout all content areas.